Thank you, Jessica. So glad you came back to see us again. Let me just get arranged here for a minute. Okay. So it's the last Sunday of the month, and the theme of the month and the theme of this talk is yes, thank you, more please. So I will handle the yes, thank you part, and my beloved will do the more please part for you today. And this is our season of gratitude. We had a great, very poignant gratitude service on Wednesday where we sat and shared our gratitude in a circle. And for me, this season the gratitude has been more heartfelt, more down to earth with community than all other seasons. And gratitude is a great thing. It's like my mom used to say, you either got to laugh or you got to cry. And for those of us who've been on this planet for a decade or two, or maybe more, this is a fact check for you. Please be honest. How many of you have woke up in the morning and a part of your body was hurting, and you did no physical activity to make it sore? Anybody else? Laugh or cry, right? And we had a great car wash Friday and Saturday. And let me encourage you, when we do things like that, even if you don't want to participate in the car wash, just come and hang out with us and socialize with us. And but the adults in the crew, they pulled me aside and whispered, they said, Reverend Michael, this is a lot of work. You know, we both pre and post dose with Advil before we come here. So what is it about? It seems like the older we get, the freer our spirit gets, and it's convincing our body to go that 100 miles an hour we did when we were young. Yeah, so for me, as I said, gratitude is all about being from the heart and the human part of it, because gratitude is one of those traits that gets us out of our monkey mind. See, we don't all get all of our learning from a mountaintop experience. When we do, that's fine. That's what's called a mystical experience. But we learn from this human experience. That's why this community is so vitally important. I got a couple of quotes I want to share with you from the public domain about that. This one's from Melody Beatty. And I thought she spoke to it because this is how the divine teaches us in everyday life. She says, gratitude turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion into clarity. It makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. And sometimes we just don't have the spark in us. And once again, we don't have to go to the mountaintop to get that spark. And Albert Schweitzer tells us about that. He says this, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And so another way we can learn from gratitude is from our Buddhist brothers and sisters. And their gratitude is either elevated or lowered, depending on your perception, depends on how much you're looking at the materialistic world. And they had a great Buddhist proverb, but I want to fess up that I did not relate to this on the Thanksgiving meal. And I think a lot of the 50 people do. The proverb goes like this, enough is a feast. So my 2 plates of dessert was way more than enough, and I paid for it. And I don't think I'm the only one, actually. Yeah. But it's been attributed to the Buddha. He gives us a very heartfelt and humble prayer of thanksgiving or message of thanksgiving, what we should be thankful for. Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let's all be thankful. So these Buddhists, they're pretty tough on all these material possessions that we still sort of like, right? And also, when we're working with spiritual practices, I love messages that help us move our feet and take action. And this is about gratitude, and it comes from John F. Kennedy. It goes like this. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. So there comes a point in time when we're talking about any spiritual principle, it's time for us to get our faith in order and to take action. And so one thing we can be grateful for is this great spiritual tradition that we have here. And it comes from Dr. Ernest Holmes. And rather than me give you my step-down version, which I think is pretty good, I've been working on it for 50 years, but I want to quote directly from Dr. Holmes. And this is an interesting quote because it's my favorite book. It's called The Holmes Papers. That's where whatever Dr. Holmes talked about, they put it on a piece of paper without editing it and organizing it for us. And this is one of those where if you haven't read a lot, Dr. Holmes, he sort of does a good job of sort of making fun of himself, which every minister should learn from that. And he has this little dry sense of humor. And once again, this is from the Holmes Papers, and when I get through, he has a very eloquent way that he describes our philosophy that you can take with you. But he says this, I did not discover the principle of religious science. I did, however, make a very great and wonderful contribution, and that is this. I was the first person who didn't think he had to be original. Therefore, I was the most original person who ever lived. Because I figured truth does not belong to anyone. It doesn't matter who discovered it or what he believed or when. And then the next few sentences, if you want to tell people what we believe, this came straight from his mouth, unedited. He says this, it is simple enough to understand the philosophy of the ages. It is simple enough to come to believe that whatever you call it, there is only one power in the universe. There is only one presence. There is only one final law. It is good, it is love, and we call it God. It is where we are. We are in it. Since it is present everywhere, it is in us, and it is the same God. So there you go. It's 3 sentences. You don't have to say we're sort of like Oprah anymore. And it's important we have this sense of gratitude. We have these high mountaintop principles, which are very good, very eloquent, very truthful, very logical in my mind. But we got to be careful in my mind to try and split off the world in which we live in into the light and the radiant. Because the world in which we live in is all part of God, love, spirit, whatever you want to call it. And I want to make use of writings from the great physician and psychologist, Rachel Naomi Remen. And she tells a story about herself. It really spoke to me because the story starts when she's 4 years old, about a tradition that I had in my family. And that tradition is doing a family jigsaw puzzle around the holidays. And she tells from a 4-year-old perspective of her dad making a big to-do in a special jigsaw puzzle table, and her mom loving it. And then they dump the 500 or 1,000-piece jigsaw thing out. And Rachel was looking at it, and remember she's 4, and 4 years old can be precocious. And so the black and dark pieces reminded her of the spiders and the snakes, which she didn't like. So she did what every precocious 4-year-old should do. She hid the pieces under the cushion in the sofa. So sooner or later, Rachel's mom counts the pieces, straps her down and interrogates her, and she fesses up. And so they get the pieces. But that's when Rachel had this aha experience. And the first part of this is when she was 4 years old, and the second part is when she reflects back about putting the pieces together. She says, as piece after dark piece was put in place and the picture emerged, I was astounded. I had not known that there would be a picture. It was quite beautiful, a peaceful scene of a deserted beach. Without the pieces I had hidden, the game had made no sense. Perhaps winning requires that we love the game unconditionally, that life does provide all the pieces. And then a few decades later, Rachel was reflecting back on what that means and how she's used it in her life. And she says this, when I accepted certain parts of life and denied and ignored the rest, I could only see my life a piece at a time. The happiness of a success or a time of celebration, or the ugliness and pain of a loss, a failure I was trying hard to put behind me out of sight. But like the dark pieces of the puzzle, these sadder events, painful as they are, have proven themselves a part of something larger. What brief glimpses I have had of something hidden seem to require accepting as a gift every last piece. So, it's time to be thankful. We have an outstanding community with lots of love to be thankful about, to share our high points and our low points or our in-between points. It's time to be thankful about this great spiritual tradition that we have. But remember, don't think it's at the mountaintop, and don't think that you aren't getting these principles, because it's all about sharing. The good and the bad, the dark and the light, it's all God. It's all here for us. And I want to close with a prayer of thanksgiving from Ernest Holmes. I will give thanks to my inner life for all its marvelous wonders and for all its wonderful works. I will sing and be glad, for I know that I am one with truth in a perfect life. The fullness of joy is mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Michael. And thank you, Jessica and Donna and everyone else. And seriously, thank you to everyone who did the car wash. I was incredibly busy and couldn't be here, but I could drop my kids off and come back, and they were really working their butts off. So that was amazing. So I've been using this talk series theme that we have, Yes, Thank You, More Please, as kind of my mantra throughout the month. And I was hoping that we all would catch on and maybe we all take it into our own lives and start using this, yes, thank you, more please. Yes, thank you, more please. Because what I realized is that sometimes life can feel so dark or bleak or frustrating or hard that we can barely find anything to say yes to. And when we do, we must proclaim, thank you, more please. This is what I desire in my life. Yes, thank you, more please. Someone was kind to us. We're in a relationship that we love. I was in community. Oh, for the Thanksgiving, oh, more please. That's how my heart felt. And I realized that since I've been using this as my mantra, it's kind of a mindfulness trick or technique, because even if we can't seem to feel what we could be excited to have more of in our lives, it makes us think. Like, oh, that minister said, maybe I should say yes, thank you, more please. What can I say yes about, And you're thinking in your lives, oh, there's something to be grateful about. Oh, there's something I want more of. And so I was doing this myself, and let me just send out a warning right now, that as you do this and as you start to recognize what it is that's showing up in your life that is good and that you want more of, the universe doesn't understand timing, okay? So this week, for me, I got to have my Monday day off, which is really my day of cleaning my house. And then I got to have Tuesday, which I did a wedding, and it was so wonderful and beautiful. But then Wednesday, I cooked all the food for the Thanksgiving dinner and then came and did a service. And then Thursday, we had Thanksgiving and all of that wonderful stuff. And then Friday, I had to prepare for today. And then Saturday, yesterday was my daughter's 16th birthday. So all of it is good. All of it is something that I would say, yes, thank you, more please to, but not all at the same time. I'm cooked. Like you could stick a fork in me. I am done. So it's interesting, but it works, right? You acknowledge the areas that are working. You acknowledge the feeling that you loved feeling, and you say, more please. More please is this consciousness that spirit is beyond this reality, that spirit is within all of it, and it can move through us. And this more please is a desire. It's a yearning to know ourselves more, to feel the meaning of life in a deeper way, to connect with one another on a level that we have never connected before. That's the more please. And it is our imagination. It is the images that we hold in our mind that support this transformation into the more. Dr. Holmes, he once said that true imagination is not fanciful daydreaming, but it's fire from heaven. True imagination isn't fanciful daydreaming, but it's fire from heaven. And heaven being within us, heaven being a state of our own consciousness, means that that fire is within each of us. And it is able to burn. It is able to lift us and to create light in our lives so long as we are willing to work with it, to co-create it. There's a Nicaraguan poet who says something, I just had to read it a million times, and then I was like, this is the most profound thing I've ever read. Okay, he says, we have always wanted something beyond what we wanted. We have always wanted something beyond what we wanted. Something more than what we're saying. Something more than we think we're allowing ourselves to have. We always want something more, something beyond what we really say we want. And he says, desire is a great force field of energy that takes us beyond ourselves. It keeps us in touch with our senses and creates an appreciation for the multidimensional pleasures of life. Part of the restlessness in us, in this seeking and the longing, stems from this feeling deep within us of wanting to be connected, of wanting to know our connectedness and feeling incomplete. There's something missing which only the power and presence of the Supreme One can fill. And so he says in Psalms 42:1, as a deer yearns for running streams, so I too yearn for you, my God. As a deer yearns for running streams, so too I yearn for you, my God. Or as Emma would say, my good. I yearn for you, my good. Holmes also says that expectancy speeds progress. Expectancy speeds progress. So we must have a definite conviction and inner knowing that good does overcome all apparent evil, that life actually is for us, and that the universe is always with us, that the divinity of life that we can see in every tree, in every creature, in every child, is within us. But it can be really hard to see that and really hard to feel that. I know there have been times in my life where I felt so oppressed by my own thoughts, let alone the thoughts of others. And there have been times when I have tried to be positive and came up against negativity. Has that ever happened to you? And then it continues to happen, and then it continues to happen until you're like, forget it. You know? It almost feels easier to dwell in their negativity than to rise up. And I know we're all still working on it. That's why we're here, right? Okay, so don't give up on me yet. So I want to share with you who resonate with what I just said, for those of us who have been banging our heads against these walls that we've created or that the world has helped us create. There was a research experiment done by a marine biologist, and she put a shark and bait fish in a tank. And what do you think happened? Of course, the shark ate the bait fish. That's a natural cycle of life, guys. Don't feel bad for the bait fish. Okay. But then she took the shark out. Then she put a big fiberglass divider in this tank. And then she put the shark in the one side and more bait fish in the other side. And the shark was just going crazy, banging his head against the wall over and over and over, trying to get to these bait fish. This is what he eats. This is what keeps him alive. And so he's banging his head. About an hour later, he finally gives up. And he just strolls around his little area. And this same experiment was done over like a dozen times over a couple weeks. And little by little, the shark was broke down. The shark became extremely less aggressive. The shark began to not even try, not even attempt to hit the wall anymore. And then the biologist took the fiberglass divider out, and the bait fish swam all around, and the shark was so conditioned to believe that there was a barrier between him and the bait fish that he didn't even try to eat him. And the moral of this story is that we are the sharks. We are the sharks. Something somewhere in our lives has created this emotional distress within us, this emotional blockage in our lives. It has created boundaries and walls. And it says, no, I cannot allow myself to be vulnerable enough to believe that I might be able to actually experience this, that there might actually be more, because I've hit my head against that wall so many times that it's not worth it anymore. But just like that song said, they had to have 1,000,000 dreams before it came true. Is it worth it to just not try, just because it didn't work out? Is it worth it to not have a relationship with the God of our understanding just because maybe a God of our old understanding didn't serve us? Is it worth it to believe that we need to live mediocre lives around people who couldn't really care about us? Is it really worth it? Or is it possible for us to just for a moment imagine that these barriers, that these walls might have cracks in them? And in those cracks is the light of who we really are trying to shine through. Even in the smallest crack, even in the smallest peephole, there is light that shines through, and it can drench us in its truth. So I want to invite us to pray right now. Just move into this space and this time. I invite us to take a deep breath and feel what is going on in this room. Feel your body, your spirit, your soul twisting and turning and churning and churning and churning. Allowing the wheels of divine and human experiences to collide within us. Knowing that there is, in fact, no wall, no barrier between us and the good that we seek, between us and the God that we know, between us and the universal presence of love and truth and peace that resides eternally with us. And yet, let us focus on that one sliver of light that breaks open our heart, that breaks open our mind, that breaks open our spirit, and says, okay, this is what I can hold on to. This is my yes, thank you, more, please. For this amount of light can transform my entire being into who I really am. And this is my affirmation for everyone that can hear my voice, for everyone that I can hold in mind, for everyone in this earth. I speak my word with conviction that we are the children of the Most High, and we have been inherited, that we have inherited the glory of good, the peace that passes all understanding. We have inherited the kingdom of our own consciousness, and let it rise and rise and rise now. Oh, how beautiful it is. How beautiful it is to dwell in this space and this place, this sacred holiness that is right here, all around us. And for this, my heart is so filled with thanksgiving, so filled with gratitude, that I get to be in a place, in a space where we know for each other, where we hold each other up in that light. How good it is to be us here today. Yes, thank you, more please. And so it is. And so it is.